I am so thrilled to be able to join you today virtually. This is weird. When you are a virtual speaker at this conference, I actually see a Zoom as though, it's like seeing any other colleague on Zoom, but instead it is the auditorium. And a moment ago, it was the stage, which was super weird because then, of course, anyway, thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I want to start out by telling you a little bit about my cybersecurity career, which started about 17 years ago. I was leading information security teams at eBay and Zynga. These were very cool places to be working in cybersecurity. In both cases, we were running online operations 24/7 with millions of simultaneous users daily. eBay had an uptime requirement of 99.94%, and as one of the first major electronic commerce shops, enabled strangers to transact with each other over the internet. Zynga was growing incredibly rapidly as an early adopter of Amazon AWS. In 2009, the Zynga game Farmville launched. Wonder if anyone here remembers Farmville. And in just a few weeks, the game went from 0 to 10 million daily active users. A few months later, it rose to 80 million daily active users. At Cobalt, we build security software and we do pen testing as a service. I want to start this talk by telling you about the first time that I realized that most organizations do not do enough pen testing. Between 2013 and 2016, I led more than 36 BSIM assessments. BSIM stands for Building Security in Maturity Model, and it's a descriptive framework for real-life software security. There are 128 firms in the latest BSIM data pool. This data pool can be thought of as somewhat representative of all of the companies in the world that operate using software, but with one pretty big caveat. It costs 5 figures to do a BSIM, and if you can spend that much money paying a management consultant to interview your software development teams and give you a scorecard on how you're doing software security, you're probably relatively mature when it comes to doing software security. So let's go ahead and assume that the BSIM data pool is above average compared to the rest of the world. I learned something really startling when I was doing this work, flying around the world. This was pre-COVID, talking to teams about their software development practices. I found out that a typical enterprise with 1,000 software applications was only pen testing about 100 of those applications. Just 10% of most enterprise application portfolios were getting manual pen testing. This to me was and is sort of terrifying. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this. Historically, pen testing has been expensive and slow. It has been hard to get access to quality talent, whether you're building an in-house team or working with a third-party provider. I do have some good news. Last year in Cobalt's 2021 State of Pen Test report, we found out that organizations are doing more pen testing. We talked to more than 600 international security folks and found out that on average, folks are now pen testing 63% of their application portfolios. This is a huge increase, and I'm here to tell you why and how, and to promote the idea that we could actually increase that number even further. I firmly believe that it is the right thing to do. Because if you're responsible for 100 houseplants, it would be unacceptable to only water 10 of them. If you're in charge of caring for 100 cats, it would be unacceptable to provide food and shelter for only 10 of them. Last year in 2021, our industry got a new OWASP Top 10. The first OWASP Top 10 came out in 2003, 17 years ago. And when I put our latest OWASP Top 10 right next to the original OWASP Top 10, these two are alarmingly similar. What this indicates is that the most common vulnerabilities found in web applications today are not so different from 17 years ago. 17 years is a long time. There is this actor, his name is Matthew McConaughey. In 2003, he starred in a movie called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And in 2021, he played an animated koala in the movie Sing 2. This is how much time has gone by. And yet, the OWASP top 10 is largely the same. Why haven't things changed? Why aren't they getting way better, way faster? Today, I want to talk a little bit about a history lesson. I want to take a look at the past decade or so in cybersecurity and compare that to the past decade in software development. I would like to present a maturity model on how to scale pen testing, as well as give some advice on how to do so. So why? Why are things so not good? Why is it that the majority of enterprises are only testing, manually pen testing 10% of their software portfolio in 2016 and just a little over 60% as of last year? Because we know what to do. The OWASP top 10, for example, and all the supporting guidance provides information on exactly how to find, fix, and prevent the most common vulnerability types. And this information has stayed fairly consistent for 2 decades. The problem is that it's just not that fun or cheap or convenient to do. So I believe that there is a difference between doing controls and managing risk. We as an industry, we love our frameworks and our best practices and our standards. The graphic that you see here on the left is the table of contents for NIST 853, a nearly 500-page long document. And sometimes I wonder if we do ourselves a disservice with these lengthy documents. I wonder, and I think that sometimes this actually makes cybersecurity seem a lot more complicated than it needs to. I actually believe that cybersecurity can be simple. Simple does not necessarily mean easy, but simple does mean that it can be easier to understand. On the right side, I present a simple model, just 4 things that you need to do. Because if you're able to govern your software, if you're able to find vulnerabilities, fix those vulnerabilities, and prevent vulnerabilities, I think that goes a really long way towards actually managing risk. I think that we as an industry have an opportunity to focus on the things that matter and to do them well and to do them often. After all, what is the point of cybersecurity? We're trying to manage risk. Security is about protecting value, and so much of what we value today has shifted from the physical realm to the digital realm. Value protection is about risk management. This list says we need to manage risk because we care about what other people think. This second list says we need to manage risk because we want to build and maintain and operate software that is resilient to malicious attack. We actually want to secure our software, but we're not quite getting this right. My former manager, Sammy Miguez, is a brilliant guy. Historically, even though our industry hasn't gotten risk management right, why? Budget-driven risk management is not good enough. If we are only able to cover 10% of a software portfolio with appropriate security testing, that's not good enough. This is another slide saying if you manage risk and it's purely budget-driven, your dollar may only get you so far. And for what it doesn't cover, you're SOL. Of course, SOL stands for sorry, you're out of luck. Every time we build software and we don't test it properly for security vulnerabilities, we're gambling and we're losing. Our odds have gotten a little bit better, but we're still rolling the dice every single time. Next part of the presentation, I want to talk about cybersecurity a decade in review. In fact, for fun, let's talk about 2 decades in review. So in 1998, a group of young hackers went to Washington with a warning for the United States Congress: software and computer networks are insecure. One of those hackers told senators that any of the 7 individuals seated before you could take down the internet in just half an hour. Those same hackers went back 20 years later in 2018, and they offered a similarly bleak assessment. Digital security is hardly any better. Joe Grant, who went by the hacker name Kingpin in his Loft days, said, "At Loft, we tried to be the voice of reason. in raising awareness for problems. Nearly all of what we said 20 years ago still holds true. Yes, there have been improvements, but the general class of problems are the same. Chris Weisopel said back then the threat was the teenage hacker, and now it's nation states, so every vulnerability got a lot more risky. 20 years ago, the threat of nation states and foreign governments with skilled hackers seems so theoretical, is what Chris Weisopel said. But we know 20 years later that this is happening constantly. We also know that about 20 years later, our OWASP top 10, our list of most common web application security vulnerability types, is basically the same. Last year, I read a book, and that book is called 4,000 Weeks. And it's funny because it's a productivity book, but it's not the type of productivity book that says you can save yourself 5 minutes in the morning if you brush your teeth while you're in the shower. It's the type of productivity book that says, look, the average human lifespan is 4,000 weeks. And if that's the case, what are you going to do with your precious 4,000 weeks? This year, I happen to be crossing my 2,000 week mark. And I've spent my entire career in cybersecurity. I fully expect that I will spend my entire career in cybersecurity. And in another 20 years, I would really like to see some change. How are we going to make change happen? How do we fundamentally change this industry and get to a point where we're making meaningful progress? So we looked at cybersecurity in 2 decades. Sorry, my mouse is being a little funny. Okay. We talked about cybersecurity. The state of security has not changed fundamentally for 20 years. What if we look sideways at our friends over in software development? What's going on with those folks? So my observation is that while the state of cybersecurity has been quite stagnant for the past 20 years, software development has made tremendous strides in the last 10 years. In 2011, Puppet released the first State of DevOps report, and 2 years later, the report had established the relationship between DevOps and high-performance outcomes. Because organizations that do DevOps do more frequent deployments, have short lead time to change, lower change failure rates, and faster mean time to recovery. If companies practicing DevOps have higher performance outcomes, then naturally, we want to learn more about what those companies are doing. And the State of DevOps report gives prescriptive advice about what kinds of things work best in today's environment. Here's something from the State of DevOps 2021. Security can't be an afterthought or the final step before delivery. It must be integrated throughout the software development process. To securely deliver software, security practices must evolve faster than the techniques used by malicious actors. During the 2020 SolarWinds and CodeCov software supply chain attacks, hackers covertly embedded themselves into the infrastructure of thousands of customers of those companies. Given the widespread impact of these attacks, the industry must shift from a preventive to a diagnostic approach where software teams should assume that their systems are already compromised and build security into the supply chain. It's easy to emphasize the importance of security and suggest that teams need to prioritize it, but doing so requires several changes from traditional information security methods. The report says that you can do better security if you do the following things. Number 1, conduct a security review for all major features. Number 2, invite InfoSec early and often. Number 3, use high quality documentation. They found that teams with high quality documentation were 3.8 times as likely to integrate security throughout their development process. Not everyone in the organization has security expertise, but the expertise of those who do is best shared in an organization through documentation. So if we look at 20 years in cybersecurity and then we compare that with 10 years in software development, I ask myself, what's changed in the world of software development? What happened that made everything get better so fast? SaaS happened. Clouds happened. Cloud happened. SaaS companies have fundamentally transformed the enterprise software model, and there's no going back. In his SaaS manifesto, Peter Levine says, it doesn't happen so often, but every 10 or 15 years, we are in the throes of reordering the $4 trillion corporate IT market. Depending on which side of that transformation you sit, this is either the best time to be an enterprise technology company or reason to start looking for new work. SaaS-first businesses like Salesforce, Box, HubSpot, Wix, ServiceNow, and Workday are taking over. It's becoming risky for enterprise software companies not to adopt SaaS technology and business. There is a real fear of being left behind. Over the next 10 to 20 years, every software company will be a SaaS company. SaaS companies don't necessarily have all the answers, but they are inherently flexible and they can easily iterate according to market feedback and business needs. It's all about speed of innovation, design, and usability. The faster you go, the less you spend on product development, the fewer person hours are required to deliver a complete solution. Every iteration is an opportunity to deliver greater business value. So, what if we took on-prem and the change to SaaS, and we considered doing that for something like manual pen testing? Here is a pen test maturity model. And as you take a look at the slide, and if you find yourself in the ad hoc or in maybe the structured section and you want to get more to strategic, I have some advice. And here it is. There's 3 parts to it. The first part is do pen testing faster and more often. So why does an organization need a pen test in the first place? Usually it's because of one of the following reasons. Maybe you have a customer who says they need to see a pen test report before they can commit to buying your product. Maybe there's a regulator who says that they need to see a pen test report as part of a regulatory compliance exercise. Maybe you're getting acquired and the company that's buying yours wants to see a pen test before they complete the transaction and add your risk profile to theirs. Maybe you've just deployed a new feature or an entirely new product, and you want to find and fix security vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by malicious actors. In any case, one way to get strategic with scaling your pen test program is simply to start faster. When you've decided that what you need to pen test, get the technical experts performing manual pen test activities right away, like within 24 hours. Because the sooner you start, the sooner you will have the finalized pen test report in the hands of the person who is asking for it. It also means that you're that much closer to knowing about exploitable vulnerabilities in your software, and the sooner you know about them, the sooner you can fix them. And then the sooner you can start your next pen test, because the product and engineering teams are just going to keep building new things. And if those new things aren't getting proper security testing, they're probably vulnerable. Advice number 2, remediate risk smarter. I have observed a super silly thing in my 17-year career working in cybersecurity, which is that so many of our compliance regimes and best practices frameworks will recommend that you do some kind of defect discovery, like pen testing or scanning for vulnerabilities, but then they don't actually require that you fix what you find. When I talk about scaling pen testing, I don't just mean printing a PDF document, handing it to a regulator, checking a box, and moving on with the rest of your day. I mean finding security vulnerabilities in your applications and fixing them. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that fixing vulnerabilities is hard. And most of the time, if your job is to be a cybersecurity professional, fixing vulnerabilities actually involves getting someone else to do something. Getting other people to do stuff is hard. And I can tell you all about a way that does not work. If I get a 50-page PDF in my email and I forward it to a bunch of engineering managers and I say, here are the results from our pen test that we did, please work with your teams to get the findings remediated, then probably when the person reading the email opens the attachment, they just get really stressed out. And vulnerabilities don't necessarily get fixed that way. It might be better if, when a finding is discovered, the engineering team finds out in Slack, and then they go to Jira, where a ticket has been submitted that can be worked right away. It would be cool if there could be a direct line of communication between the engineer and the pen tester who found the issue in the first place, so they could ask questions and give advice and work together to get security vulnerabilities addressed. Advice number 3, use data. I have been obsessed with security data and metrics since the start of my career. This year, I'm really proud to say that my book, Security Metrics, A Beginner's Guide, made it into the Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame. I believe that better data enables us to make better decisions and achieve better outcomes. At this late stage in the cybersecurity game, let's remember that hackers testified before the United States Senate in 1998. We should have a ton of pen test data. And in theory, that would help us out a lot. But it takes grunty, time-consuming effort to physically parse through piles of customized consulting reports to get actual pen test data and format it in such a way that it can be collected and analyzed over time. I have known consulting firms who tried to do this because the data would be so interesting, but it was too much work. I think there's a better way. If the pen test data is in a standardized format that can be organized and accessed through an API, then you can actually analyze the data. You can actually use it. For years, I've heard people say, yeah, OWASP top 10 is great, but what's actually important to you is your organization's top 10 or your organization's top 5 or top 3. But how many organizations have their security metrics at a maturity level where they even know what their top 3 classes of security vulnerabilities are? Not enough. Now, there are some companies that do have super sweet pen test management and data and dashboards. Everything is custom built and very specific to that organization. For this type of company, an API to transfer pen test data from one platform to another can be super helpful. So there's this book, it's called The Phoenix Project. I love it. There's like a follow-up book. It's called The Unicorn Project. The Unicorn Project this is literally like a photo that I took on my iPhone of the hard copy book, which I'm looking around. I don't happen to have it right here. Software development folks with DevOps, with SaaS, and with cloud have figured out how to achieve the 5 ideals. And I believe that we should strive for these in cybersecurity. I happened to write a book. I have copies with me right here. There are free copies of this digitally on the internet. I wrote this book. It's about how to scale pen testing. It's called the PTAS book. I think it's really good. You can get the book, read the book. The book will tell you exactly what you need to do. But spoiler alert, the book is not going to do the work for you. The book will only work if you decide to do it. It's kind of like a 12-step program. If you follow it, your life might be better. Just do it. But people, it's not necessarily easy to do. This is a cartoon picture of me. Okay. I want to talk about an analogy. I am here to challenge where we are today as an industry and look forward to imagine where we are headed. It is time for us to examine the principles that we think about when it comes to cybersecurity. I want to talk about something that I think we use a lot of analogies in this industry, and I think a lot of the analogies that we use are wrong. I don't think security is a vitamin or a Band-Aid. I don't think it's something you can inject or do at the last minute or add on after the fact. Security is not a feature. Security has always been a result of decisions and actions made by many different people. It's actually the outcome of an unpredictable dance. And I think that for DevSecOps to be successful, we have to be collaborative and we have to work together. The first ransomware attack happened in 1989. I was 6 years old. And this ransomware attack directed users to mail $189 to a PO address in Panama. Last year, in the first half of 2021, the average ransomware payment climbed to more than $500,000. I am nearly 40 years old. When the first ransomware attack happened in 1989, I was 6 years old. This is a photo of my daughter. She's 6 years old. When she's 40, I don't want us to be talking about the same types of security vulnerabilities we are talking about today. If we don't start turning this around right now, it's just going to get worse. I would like the world to be a safe place for my daughter and for my grandchildren. I want their energy sources to be reliable. I want their food processing plants to be safe and operational. I want their computers and the internet to be a place where they can connect and create. It is time for us to do better, and I believe that we can. I have tremendous hope, but no one's going to do it for us. There is no software program or machine learning that can do this for us. We have to decide that we want it, and then we have to do it. It is not necessarily going to be easy, but it is simple. We just have to work together, security people and engineers, to collaboratively decide that it's important enough to get asset inventory right. We have to decide it's important enough to update our software and install patches when software is vulnerable. We have to decide to look for security vulnerabilities that we know are exploitable and find them and fix them. This is something that we can only do together. It is time. That is the end of my talk. I appreciate you so much and your time. I don't know if we can do like an interactive Q&A, maybe not. Here's my information. Please email me, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn. We have about 5 minutes for questions. Is there any questions on the audience? Yep, well, thank you very much for your talk. Any further questions, please post them on the online app and we'll see if you can answer that afterwards. And we'll be sending you a gift bag once we have finished the conference.
Thank you so much. Take care all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening.
Thank you.